All right. Good morning, Derrick. How are you doing here today?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. We're watching some of these earnings come out here. Waiting on NVIDIA really is what it feels like. But we got a market here that's pulling back. So first question that I have for you, what do you have on the list of watches right now?
Sure. So I always take a big picture down a small picture approach. And my big picture thought process right now is definitely not bullish. I'll start by saying that.
Yeah.
I've actually had a bearish thought process for a little while, but I thought we had to get to around OPEX in order for that to trigger. And lo and behold, Friday, OPEX day, it began to trigger. I actually found myself, just a week ago, we were making all-time highs, and I found myself net short in a market that was breaking out, which was a little bit scary, but kind of had the fundamental thesis that we were actually going to have a failed breakout, which would cause us to break lower. That obviously happened. So 2 big down days in a row. Today is day 3. At one point this morning, we were gapping down. Now we bounced off pre-market lows, so we're up small. While my thought process right now is still kind of bearish on the big picture, there will be tactical times for long opportunities. I mean, I remember in 2022 when we had that bear market, some of the best trades I had throughout that bear market are actually to the long side, because when you have more bearish type markets, not that we're anywhere close to a bear market yet, but when you have more bearish type markets, that's actually when a lot of the fastest up moves actually occur throughout history. So you can find good opportunities for tactical longs. And I think that into like a day 3 down, especially a little earlier this morning when we were first at the gap down, you can be looking for some good bounce back opportunities in some stocks that are overextended or some stocks that have news. Like I have Reddit on my watch list for a long. We actually called that one out yesterday. I have TTD on my watch list for a long. We called that one out yesterday. For today, I've got PayPal on my list for a long. They reaffirmed their fiscal year 25 guidance this morning ahead of expectations, and the stock is trading well. I've got Amazon on my list for a potential bounce back trade today. At the same time, I covered my MSTR short into the gap down this morning because that's been a pretty big move. So into like a day 3, day 4 down, when we begin to extend to the downside, that's when I want to look to be covering some of my shorts, putting on some short-term tactical longs. But personally, I think that any bounce here is short-lived unless NVIDIA does something incredible. NVIDIA has the power right now to change the theme of this market if they put out another incredible earnings report, and you can never count them out from doing that because they've done it so many times in the past. With that said, like always, it seems like NVIDIA's expectations are so high, or the market's expectations for NVIDIA are so high, that if you see just an inline report or, God forbid, a miss, that will actually probably further continue the overall weakness on this market that we've started to see.
Yeah, and that's kind of the exact same position we've been thinking about here on NVIDIA, right? Like, not only do they have to beat, but they really have to beat, quote, enough for it to really kind of feel like it's going to keep moving up here. NVIDIA clearly in a down channel. We're not that far away from the 200-day moving average. And honestly, I'd like some reset valuations in some of these high flyers. You were just talking there about tactical longs, which I absolutely love. I totally agree with you. When we find ourselves, maybe not even in a bear market, but if the tape is bearish itself, sometimes you'll get really violent up moves. And if you can capture those can be really great trades. How do you, when you have one of those on your hands, let's say you're already in it, you've got the entry down, how do you then determine what your exit is going to be? Are you looking at price action? Are you looking at a specific level, some type of indicator? What's telling you that the end is near and you need to take the gains off the table?
Sure. So first of all, whenever it comes to game planning for reward maximization, the first question I have to ask myself is, what type of trade am I actually in? Am I in a breakout trend continuation trade, or am I in kind of what we just described, which is, hey, we got like a day 3, day 4 down. I want to look for a tactical bounce trade, in which case I'm going to have a much more shallow reward target. So for me, the way that I like to study markets is through a concept that I call technical equilibrium. I consider the technical equilibrium zone for any stock on any time frame to be the space between the 8 and 21 EMA. So if I'm looking at a market, like for example, the Qs this morning were about $10 below the QQQ ETF, about $10 below their 8 EMA on the daily, or at least they were pre-market lows this morning. I'd be looking for a bounce back trade on the Qs if that's what I chose to buy, to about the 8 EMA on the daily chart, which would represent in a down market the lower band of equilibrium. And it could overshoot that. It could get to some in the 8 and 21 EMA, it could shoot to as much as even the 21 EMA. Again, we saw a lot of examples of that back in 2022's bear market, where the market would get extremely downside extended. Then we'd have these face ripping rallies that would bring you sometimes all the way through the 21 EMA before the market peaked out, and then we rolled down and created a new low in our bear market. So on a counter trend tactical long setup, I'm basically just looking for a snapback to what I consider to be the equilibrium zone for the stock that I'm trading.
Okay, awesome. We are here with Derrick Oldemsmith from T3. Trade with Derrick for free in his Pro Desk virtual trading floor from February 25th to February 28th. QR code is on the screen. Link is in the chat there. Okay, I got a really quick question. Do you trade or follow Bitcoin at all?
I mentioned this morning that I was short MSTR, which I covered. So I'm out of that position. And if you're trading MSTR, you better well be following Bitcoin. So I've been looking at the IBIT 53 level, and I've been looking at for BTC spot, like 93,000 area. I had read an analyst note a couple weeks back that if Bitcoin were to break 93,000, it would force selling from some levered folks that are out there. So 93,000 is really important. 90,000 is really important. And again, that 93,000 level more or less coincided with that IBIT 53, which was holding us some support. So we lost that yesterday. We're getting continuation this morning. MSTR has been, one of my favorite shorts. I was short from 330. My target was the mid 260s. So again, I got out of that position this morning and starting to extend down. It's something that I'm definitely interested in reshorting into any sort of real bounce back. I'm just not a believer in MicroStrategy at all, or the way the company is structured.
Okay, awesome. And that's actually really good stuff there on that Bitcoin, because we did actually see it lose 92 and 90,000 overnight. I think it got as low as 86,000 here today. So I wonder if some of those levered traders are ended up ditching it there. Interesting stuff there. Okay. And then I had another question here about some of the momentum stocks that we've seen recently. I can't remember if did you trade any of those quantum names? Did you do really well with those names? Yeah. Okay. So here's my question then with it seems like the Momo is kind of drying up here. You did a really good job covering NVIDIA and what that might mean for the rest of the market. Are you going back to any of these quantum names? Do you think any of these names might provide some of that bounce that you were talking about earlier? Might these be good targets for short-term tactical long trades?
So the quantum names are not my favorite things to go after, even into downside extension. I had actually taken them long, like this RGTI I took long on January 13th, because the downside extension on that was just really, really extreme for that similar bounce back trade. And I was able to make a few dollars for myself there. I just don't believe in these companies that aren't even really producing much revenue yet. If I was going to look for these types of growth stocks for long trades, I would rather be looking at a Robinhood or a Reddit or the Trade Desk or something that I think has a little bit more substance to it and has more short-term growth ability. The quantum stocks, I actually tried to buy a couple of these just the other day when this QBTS was attempting to break out, and it gave a false breakout. So I pretty quickly stopped myself out on the trade, and I ended up being break even or maybe losing a few dollars on it. So I would try to buy those for upside momentum. But what I was saying, even when I was buying QBTS a few days ago when I tried to break out on the daily chart, is I'm buying this, but really I'm hoping it gets to $9, $10, not just so I can make a few dollars on the long side, so actually so that I can short it there, because I think that's where the meat of the trade really would be back on the short side. Quantum is an avoid for me right now until we see that sector wake up a little bit more. It's just become kind of too tight and choppy. And I remember back in January telling my team, like, guys, we had a great trade in these quantum names. If you caught it, great, congratulations. But more importantly, if you didn't catch it, don't force the trade now. A very common mistake I see, especially with newer traders, is they see the people around them make so much money in whatever trade it is, whatever opportunity it is, and they go, oh my God, I missed that opportunity. Now I'm going to get involved. and then they get involved as soon as that there is no opportunity. It's already gone. The trade is gone. And then you can see with QBTS, RGTI, all those names, they've just been super choppy for the last month and a half or so. And if you're trying to force trades and chop when that opportunity isn't there anymore because you saw other people make money, that's a recipe to not only not make money, but to actually lose money. And then you're extra frustrated because you were like, oh man, not only did everybody make money in RGCI,
how did I
but
lose?
I lost
How did I lose on a stock that everyone else made money on? Absolutely. That's really, really good stuff. I'm super glad that you mentioned that. We talk a lot about FOMO and chasing and how to avoid all of that stuff. And you really just hit it on the head there. Okay. I wanted to, if it's okay, I wanted to dive in a little bit more into the specifics of your Reddit trade. I know, at least for me, this is one that I was just totally off sides. I am not a Redditor at all. I think the thing itself is silly. I'm not really sure how the stock is up here, but nonetheless, school me on Reddit. What levels are you looking for? And I guess what type of price action are you looking for? What's the game plan here on Reddit?
Sure. So I just think that Reddit has just a massive amount of growth potential, broadly speaking. And you could argue that when it was at $230, it was overpriced. So I remember trading this alongside pretty aggressively several times initially post IPO when it was a $40, $50, $60 stock and doing really well with it. And then at a certain point into this up move, which almost turned parabolic, the stock just kind of lost me. It was too far, too fast. And while I think that the company has a tremendous amount of growth potential, it is just, it's not, I don't believe in chasing price. Chasing price just doesn't set you up for good risk reward. But now the stock has pulled back from 230 to yesterday $155 or so on an earnings report that was generally speaking really good, but they didn't like the fact that the user growth had slowed down a little bit, but that was specifically because of a change in Google search algorithm, which my understanding they've already found a way to make up for that. So the bigger picture thought process for me is that this is a company. I mean, think about what Meta's been able to do with their users. So the question has always been: is Reddit a Snap or is Reddit a Meta, or is it potentially somewhere in between? And I'm of the opinion that unlike Snap, which has a very specific user base catered towards very young people, and then there's all types of advertising issues when you're dealing with young people, and it's really more of a chat app than a social media app. Reddit, I think, has the capacity to be much more like a Meta when you think about advertising and you think about the ways that different businesses that they can move into. And I think that there's a real chance that Reddit actually becomes one of the big winners in podcasting eventually, even though it hasn't even breached into that space yet. But just imagine you're going into Reddit. Why are most people going into Reddit anyway? Because they want to see some degree of like user combined knowledge. Well, now all of a sudden, if you have your Reddit podcasts that are coming in that are also for a specific topic, and they can link to that, and Reddit's getting all the revenue for that. There's just a lot of potential levers I think that they can pull to grow into a tremendous amount of profitability over time based on a massive amount of users. And I'll be honest, until somewhat recently, I was never a major Reddit user either, but I have enough friends who are constantly sending me links of, hey, check this out, hey, check this out, hey, check that out, where even as someone who was never really going to Reddit myself, I'm just getting enough friends sending me links that I'm just clicking on where I'm almost like a daily active user myself. And then that actually became the starting point for me to start to follow different subreddits a little bit more and start to look into things a little bit more. So that's kind of my qualitative fundamental thought process, which is something I like to have, but then it needs to be confirmed by technicals. So when I'm looking at growth stocks broadly beginning to get crushed, as we saw Palantir begin to get crushed, which is also an extremely expensive stock, and you see Reddit and a bunch of these names getting hit back down. Well, now I'm looking at a stock that's dived from 230 down to 155, and yesterday it was like that day three to the downside where it can give that RDR setup. I know you've had Scott Redler on the show in the past, where that day three RDR setup kind of came in yesterday as a potential long. The only thing that's holding me back from being aggressive on a trade like that right now is that I'm still not big picture bullish on the actual index for the SPYs and the Qs. So it's having me still be a little bit cautious on really initiating any new major long positions right now, because I kind of wait till I'm a little bit more confident for the market to settle out. But like this then circles back to what we were saying earlier. You can still look for some of these tactical longs if you're quick with them to make a few dollars for yourself. That could be buying Reddit at 157, getting a bounce back to 172, liquidating the position, market sells off, Reddit leads to a new low specifically because the market's selling, and then you get your next setup to come in. And then if that is then happening closer to a bigger picture market bottom, then there's your really meaty trade. So that's kind of what I'm really waiting for right now to some degree with some of the longs that I want to be involved in, is to get more confidence that the market's giving at least some sort of shorter term, more capitulation style bottom, and I don't think that we're there yet. And then I really want to come in and grab some of these names on setups with a little bit more size and look for a larger reward profile than just a simple snapback to the equilibrium zone.
Okay, really good breakdown there on Reddit. Folks, this is Derrick Oldemsmith from T3. You can trade with Derrick for free in his Pro Desk virtual trading floor, February 25th today through February 28th. QR code there on the screen. Derrick, is there anything else that you have before we adjourn here for the day? Any other stock you want to mention or take a look at?
I think that mainly covers it on my end. You know, like I said, I'm really macro focused, and while we could get a short-term bounce here today, tomorrow, I think it would actually make sense to see that. Unless NVIDIA really pulls a rabbit out of its hat, I think that this market is still setting up for lower prices. So know your major index level support levels. So 590 is important with the SPYs, but 580 is the huge level. And for the Qs, 510 is the huge level that you really need to pay attention to. And the IWM, it actually lost 218 yesterday, which is a super important level that just leaves the low of the year, which is down at basically 214 or just a couple of dollars away from that. So know your key index levels, understand that markets work in periods of feedback cycles over time. We're currently in a feedback cycle where selling leads to more selling unless some sort of event like NVIDIA can actually come out and actually save things. And into a real decline at a certain point, show me a 5 to 10% down move here. Show me SPYs getting to somewhere between like 580 in the 200-day at 570 or even a little bit below that. And that's kind of the area I'm looking at for some real bigger picture buys at this point, unless the evidence changes.
Okay. Derrick, that is awesome. Derrick Oldemsmith from T3. Again, hit that QR code on the screen here. Derrick, thanks so much for breaking this down. Real good stuff. We'll catch up with you next time. All right.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Talk to you soon.